Joining us now, Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Democratic Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois. Mr. Chairman, it's good to see you today. We were just talking a minute ago, and Chris Matthews was talking about the Department of Justice and where it stands in its investigation into January 6th and the attempted coup and the overturning of the 2020 election. What is your understanding as the chair of the Judiciary Committee about where that investigation may be, how it's moving along, and what you all on your committee are looking at?
Well, the good news is that the investigation is proceeding through the House of Representatives. The January 6th committee has done an extraordinary job. And it's also good news that we have a Department of Justice under Merrick Garland that is separate from the White House. It is not the president's personal lawyer. In fact, Merrick Garland views himself as the people's lawyer in this country. And I don't know his agenda, and it's a good thing I don't. He is looking at the facts that are coming out in the January 6th situation, and I'm sure going to evaluate them. But when we have evidence of Trump and his enemies list and using the Department of Justice and Bill Barr in egregious fashions, it's quite a refreshing change to have an Attorney General who's independent.
Senator Ginni Thomas will meet with the January 6th committee sometime in the coming weeks. She, of course, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. The committee has evidence she exchanged emails with Trump lawyer John Eastman about his strategies to overturn the 2020 election. The panel also has those text messages she sent to the former president's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, encouraging him not to concede the election to Joe Biden. In one message, 2 days after the election, Thomas sent Meadows a conspiracy theory that was spreading on far-right website, which said Biden, his family, and ballot fraud co-conspirators would be arrested and held on barges off Gitmo to face military tribunals for sedition. Thomas added, "I hope this is true." Earlier this month, the Washington Post obtained emails Thomas sent to lawmakers in Wisconsin calling on them to choose new electors. She sent nearly identical emails to lawmakers in Arizona days after the 2020 election. Her lawyer has said Thomas was just concerned about the future of the country under President Biden's leadership, that nothing she did was illegal, and that she did not have any role or information about the January 6th attack on the Capitol. We should note Clarence Thomas was the only justice to dissent when the Supreme Court ruled former President Trump could not withhold presidential records from the January 6th committee. Chairman, you expressed concern in real time about this potential conflict of interest for Justice Thomas. What do you make of Ginni Thomas now going before the January 6th committee?
Willie, let's get to the bottom line here. Mrs. Thomas has the right to exercise any authority given to her by the Constitution that is part of someone's civic duty or civic opportunity and responsibility. But when she does that, her husband ought to think twice about the role he's playing on the United States Supreme Court and have the good common sense and good taste to step aside from cases that are in conflict with his wife's active political involvement. And we have evidence of that over and over again. Clarence Thomas has no sensitivity to that conflict of interest, and it's pretty obvious he should have.
Senator Durbin, last month in August, a very wealthy guy contributed $1.6 billion to a conservative nonprofit institution in Washington. And they are going to dispense this money over the course of I don't know how many election campaigns and how many years. But they're not going to have to record much other than the amount of money that they've donated to whomever they donate it to. My question to you is there any hope at all that the spoilage that so much money does to our political system on both sides of the aisle, is there any way that we can clean this up?
When the American people get fed up with it, look at the situation. A Chicago businessman named Barry Seid made a fortune, $1.6 billion in electronics business, sold it and took the proceeds and gave it to an entity controlled by Leonard Leo. That's the same man who founded the Federalist Society. The Federalist Society, of course, produced the acceptable list of nominees for the Supreme Court, which Donald Trump advertised and publicized. Every single Trump nominee that came before us in the last 4 years in his presidency had the stamp of approval of the Federalist Society. And look what we got on the Supreme Court and what they did in the Dobbs decision. Now Leonard Leo's at work again, and he is fully financed by this Barry side by $1.6 billion that he can inject into races across America to produce electoral results. This is the reality of secret, dark money. And the American people get sick of it and don't believe that a 90-year-old businessman in Chicago should control America's political future. And when they vote against the people who are there proposing, then we're going to see a change.
Senator Chris Matthews is here with a question for you. Chris?
Senator, all my life, candidates for the presidency, including incumbents, have accepted the victory, the voting decision of the electorate on election day. They have all said, starting with Adlai Stevenson from your state, I lost. You know, some were very poetic about it, but they owned it up in a matter of hours that they lost the election. All the way through, Hillary Clinton the next morning said, I lost. I'm sorry I lost. And this character, and that's what I'm calling him, a character, this person, I don't know if he's a public servant at all, Donald Trump has refused to admit, and many of his followers, as Hillary Clinton on this program said last week, are enthralled with him to the point they believe him when he says, I won. I won by the most votes in history. What can we do with this person who will not admit the American voter made a decision, they didn't want him anymore?
He's a little man with a big ego. I think that's the reality of the situation. I've been through elections which I've lost and many which I've won. When I lost, I called and conceded to my opponent. That is considered to be normal American practice, but not with this former president. He refuses to accept the reality that the American people rejected him, and he has been pushing the big lie ever since. It troubles me greatly that some of my colleagues in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, whom I like and respect, will not speak out against the big lie. In fact, they're silent in that situation when they should be very vocal. This is the fundamentals of democracy in America. And I will tell you what Donald Trump is doing is not only an exercise in ego, but it's dangerous to the future of this country.
Senator Durbin, in the wake of the search, the FBI search at Mar-a-Lago, there was a real spike in number of threats against law enforcement, against FBI, against others who worked at the DOJ. And there's been concern among law enforcement officials that as this investigation continues, particularly were it to lead to a potential indictment for the former president or perhaps members of his family, that there could be more danger and indeed violence itself. Now, you had a resolution condemning violence and threats against the FBI that passed unanimously in the Senate. Tell us why that's important. Particularly, that means you had some Republicans on board, all of them.
We sure did. And I'll tell you what, we had a hearing and brought in the FBI, and they told us in detail what they faced since the August 8th, the search warrant was exercised down in Mar-a-Lago. It's terrible, and it's threatening to them and their families, and it gets very personal. And so I introduced this resolution to say this is unacceptable. Never, never, never allow violence against anyone in the name of exercising your political right under the Constitution. And I made that very clear. And I put it on the floor and said, if any Republican wants to stand up and defend a situation where former President Trump is calling FBI agents, quote, vicious monsters, that's the phrase he used, will come to the floor now and confront me on this resolution. Not a single one would do it. It passed unanimously.
And as you say, many of your Republican colleagues have picked up on that rhetoric from Donald Trump against the FBI, and we should add against the IRS. Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois. Senator, thanks so much as always. We appreciate it.